Leader of the Opposition in the Parliament of Sri Lanka, Honorable Eran Wickramaratne, Honorable Sujeeva Serasinha, Mr. Lakshman de Fonseca, Dr. Bhaskaran, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Jaffna, academic colleagues and friends from Jaffna. I think it is entirely appropriate that we are having this event of the Samgi Buddhi Mandapaya, the intellectual wing of our party, in Jaffna. Jaffna is the heartland of philosopher statesmen. My own teacher and predecessor in the chair of law in the University of Colombo, the late Professor Tambaya Nadaraja, was the grandson of Sir Ponnambalam Arunachalam. There were many others, Sir Ponnambalam Ramanathan, Sir Arunachalam Mahadeva, and others, who made a single contribution to Ceylon's struggle for independence. Education has always been valued by the people of Jaffna. As was just mentioned to you, the oldest girls' school, not only in our country, but in the South Indian region, South India, Sri Lanka, the oldest girls' school is situated near Jaffna. And I had the privilege of visiting that school and presiding over the prize giving there a few years ago. This event has been made possible by the commitment and dedication of Dr. Bhaskaran, Mr. Ranjan Bandara, and many other colleagues. The purpose of this is to develop, on the initiative of the Honorable Sajid Premadasa, a new approach to the formulation and implementation of public policy. It is no longer to be top-down. The idea is to get inputs from as broad a spectrum of society as possible. Ideas, suggestions, perspectives, and to construct the policy of a Sajid Premadasa administration, drawing upon these rich intellectual resources which are available to us. So the think tank of our party is committed to dialogue, discussion, engagement, clash of ideas. And it is from such an interaction that we believe that policy is beneficial for the people of our country can be evolved. Now, the Honorable Sajid Premadasa has been very pragmatic, very practical in identifying his priorities. He regards our whole country as one. And diversity in ethnicity, in religion, in culture, to him is a source of great strength. It adds to the vitality of our nation. It is not a source of weakness, it is not a source of problems, but it is a resource to be exploited in full in carrying our country forward at a challenging time. Unlike other leaders who have visited this region in the recent past, he has defined with clarity and precision what needs to be done at this time. You have heard during the last few weeks political leaders from the South coming here and talking to you about devolution, about reconciliation. But the Honorable Sajid Premadasa has asked a very relevant question in that regard. Devolution to whom? For 5 years, the people of the North, and indeed the people of Sri Lanka as a whole, have been deprived of the opportunity of electing their representatives at the provincial council tier. Under Sri Lanka's constitution, Professor Balasundaram Pillai referred to many areas of deprivation. Under the 13th Amendment to Sri Lanka's constitution, about 36 vital functions which impact on your daily lives, all these functions have been given to provincial councils. The Supreme Court of our country, in a celebrated judgment, said that provincial councils perform functions that are of vital significance to our people from the cradle to the grave. Throughout your life, you depend upon your provincial councils to render services which enrich your lives. Now, as I speak to you, you do not have one elected representative in your provincial council, not one. Why? Because elections have not been held for 5 years. In that case, does it make sense to talk of devolution and reconciliation? To whom do you talk? To whom do you devolve? With whom do you establish a rapport? So where do you start? The starting point, obviously, is the holding of these elections. Give the people the opportunity to elect whom they like. That is a basic right. It is a right from which all other rights flow. But you have not had that opportunity. So the Honorable Sajith Premadasa has said that under his government, within the first 6 months, provincial council elections will be held. And it is only then that talk of reconciliation and devolution will have any meaning or substance at all. It is also necessary to ensure that the central government, provincial councils, local government institutions all act in unison. They are all instruments serving the welfare of the people. I don't know whether you are aware that when the Treasury in Colombo allocates resources for the Provincial Council of the North, when those provincial councils were functioning, 40% of those resources were returned to Colombo because the Provincial Council was not able to spend that money for the benefit of the people of the North. So the money was allocated, the money was physically there. But the Provincial Council did not have the capability, it did not have the capacity to spend those resources for the well-being of the people. So there's a dire need to strengthen these structures. And this will be one of the priority objectives of a Sajith Premadasa administration. He has, and this is also important, identified the main things that ought to be done for this part of the country in the early part of his government. I would say first and foremost, if you ask the people of Jaffna, what are they most interested in? What is your first priority? I think without doubt your answer would be education. It is something that you have valued throughout your history. Schools in this part of the country are famous all over the world. Famous universities in the West, like the universities of Oxford and Cambridge, have been served at the highest levels. Chairs in those universities have been occupied by people who have been produced by schools in Jaffna, schools like St. John's College, Jaffna, Jaffna Hindu College. These colleges have produced intellectual giants. However, the problem today is that there is a horrendous mismatch between education and livelihoods. We produce graduates. The former Vice-Chancellor of Jaffna University spoke of the contrast between South Indian universities and Sri Lankan universities. We produce graduates, but they have no employment commensurate with the qualifications they hold. And that is a recipe for youth unrest. One of the most interesting things that I have done in my own life is to prepare a large part of the Presidential Commission on Youth, which was appointed by the father of the leader of the opposition, in order to examine a remarkable phenomenon. In 1990, President Ranasinghe Premadasa asked me, at a time when I was Vice Chancellor of the University of Colombo, to be a member of the Presidential Commission on Youth and to prepare a report identifying the causes of what happened and practical steps that ought to be taken to prevent a recurrence of a calamity of that magnitude in the foreseeable future. And one of the things that angry young people told us, even at that time I visited Jaffna in the company of people like Dr. Radhika Kumaraswamy, Professor Lakshman Jayatilaka, Mr. Ralph Allis, who was then principal of DSN Nayaka Vidyalaya. We came to Jaffna, we spoke to students, we spoke to principals of schools, and they all told us, we educate people, they entertain high levels of expectation, and they find there are no jobs, they cannot live with dignity in this country, they have no incomes, they can't raise a family. So the problem of the mismatch between education and employment will certainly be one of the priorities of a Sajith Premadasa administration. Professor Balasundaram Pillai identified certain problems like landlessness, the need for entrepreneurship. You spoke of Vivasaya. I think the Tamil word Vivasaya is the same as the singular word Vivasaya. Vivasaya, entrepreneurship, you rightly emphasize that. Jaffna has no rivers. The northern peninsula has no rivers. So irrigation for agricultural purposes, right? The development of the agricultural economy of the north from the standpoint of exports. I think Jaffna has something like 30 varieties of mangoes. 30 varieties of mangoes. You have fruits and vegetables which you can export to any part of the world. We can make use of trade agreements which we have with Western countries, like the GSP Plus agreement with Western Europe. But there are problems. Quality, improvement of quality and so on. Mr. Lakshman de Fonseca, who is here, is rendering yeoman service in respect of packaging. Packaging is one of the most important requirements in our country today because about 25-30% is wasted, fruits and vegetables. So these are all things that can be done and will be done under a Sajith Premadasa administration. Now I will conclude by telling you about 3 reasons why the current leader of the opposition is a worthy leader of this country during the next decade. There is today a widespread sense of cynicism about politics and politicians. Cynicism. People don't believe. Politicians are not respected by people by and large. Now, Mr. Sajith Premadasa is very much an exception to that for 3 reasons. The first reason, I'm telling you this conscientiously, the first reason is that he will never promise you something that he cannot deliver. If he is not sure whether he can do something or he will not be able to do something, he will not give you an undertaking. He will not promise you. If he gives you a promise, you can be absolutely certain that he will deliver on that promise. Credibility. Credibility is one of the important requirements of politicians. It is very rare these days. And the Honorable Sajith Premadasa, if he gives you a promise, he will not give you a promise lightly. He will not do it in cavalier fashion, but if he gives you a promise, you can be sure that he will deliver on it. The second reason has to do with corruption. One of the main reasons why there has been cynicism with regard to political culture in this country is the scale of corruption. Corruption is something that a Sajith Premadasa government will certainly eliminate. He has a determination to do that. He has shown the way. The opposition submitted to the Secretary General of Parliament a comprehensive piece of legislation to combat corruption in this country and also to bring back to Sri Lanka assets which have been stolen and stashed away abroad. So if you're looking for a practical remedy against corruption, the Sajith Premadasa government is the answer to that. Then the third and final reason is that he is the first leader of the opposition in this country to have actually performed, not merely criticized the government in power, but without any power at all. Through the Sakpala program, through the Husma program, he has gone to schools, he has gone to hospitals and given people things that are of use to them in their lives. So for all these reasons, he has demonstrated in full measure his capability to serve you in the years ahead. And I ask you to join with us, to contribute your ideas, your suggestions, your perspectives, in order to make that administration successful and beneficial for our country. Thank you very much indeed.